AVS is provided with a network editor where a user may work with available modules to make a data visualization network. An example of an AVS network designed for visualizing climate data is shown here. It consists of modules of scalar input, scalar analysis, and display output. These modules are macro modules constructed by a user. Each module consists of AVS-provided modules, and they are networked together. As an example, the content of scalar analysis module is shown here. It consists of modules of isosurface, orthogonal slice, and volume bound. However, a user can afford not to know how these modules are actually connected inside a macro module. Once a macro module is constructed, its subsequent execution will provide a user with a menu from which to select and execute modules. With the scalar analysis network, many CCM2 scalar data can be visualized. An animation can be made interactively with a graphics workstation without using a recording device. A preview of an animation is possible. If a user changes his/her mind, a different animation can be made with little loss of time and resources. The following animation examples were made with 6 days of climate data. These animations were done with AVS tools, and they could be displayed real-time on a workstation. The examples are post-processed and recorded on a videotape for this video presentation. They are contours and isosurfaces of temperature, specific humidity, surface pressure, surface geopotential height, cloud cover, surface radiation flux, snow height, and soil wetness.
Thank you. Studies in the Scripps Research Institute's Molecular Biology Department, aided by AVS, include the human enzyme superoxide dismutase, or SOD. Single amino acid defects in this protein molecule have been identified as a cause of the neuromuscular disease ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Scripps scientists have been simulating the enzyme's attraction and destruction of toxic negatively charged oxygen molecules. Other work has simulated the coiling and location of proteins that can cross cell membranes, important targets for drug design. AVS helped us illustrate our Scripps Chemistry Department's total synthesis of the anti-cancer compound Taxol, found in nature only in the bark of Pacific yew trees, and to study the iron-sulfur cluster in a DNA repair enzyme using Purvis-Culberson gradient coloring from X-ray crystallographic data. In June 1993, we illustrated important electron microscopy work on the Rio virus, which changes its shape as it enters and infects cells. This three-dimensional volume morph made with the AVS animator interpolates between the three data volumes to show how the virus loses its outer layer and then rearranges its proteins into a turret through which it injects viral RNA into its victim cells. Another virus being examined by electron microscopy, rotavirus, is the leading cause of infant death in the world through diarrhea and fatal dehydration. We are using AVS both to study the virus and to prepare figures and videotapes illustrating the work. DNA replication was illustrated by Scripps graduate student Tom Mackey. These schematics show why the ends of a strand of DNA cannot be replicated by normal cell mechanisms and require special enzymes, a part of his doctoral dissertation research. Using AVS, we've studied the fractal geometry and water molecules around protein surfaces and prepared dozens of still pictures for journal articles, covers for Science, Nature, Scientific American, and the Journal of Molecular Biology, and textbook figures for Jeffrey Zubey's forthcoming book, Principles of Biochemistry, published by William C. Brown Publishers. We've found that Scripps and AVS work well together.
The polyomino problem is an unsolved problem in combinatorial geometry dating back to 1908. The problem was first described by a mathematician named Quijano. To create a polyomino of degree n, connect n equal-sized squares at the edges. The problem presented here uses three-dimensional blocks instead of two-dimensional squares. The process of finding new shapes for n plus 1 cubes is to take all the unique shapes from the solution of n cubes and add a block to each side. Starting with a single block, a new block is added on the side to form two blocks. This is the only unique shape for two blocks. Add another block to each side of the two, and the unique shapes for n equal 3 is determined. To find the unique shapes of 4 blocks, add blocks to the two unique shapes for n equal 3. At times, the new shape seems to follow a pattern, but looking at the shapes for n equal 5, the shapes appear to be much more erratic than for n equal 4. When the number of unique shapes increases this rapidly, it is useful to show each shape one at a time. Often, some shapes may seem similar, but when using AVS to rotate these shapes, it is apparent that these shapes are not identical. Similar to your hands, they are mirror images. These are referred to as chiral shapes. When n blocks are connected, a finite number of unique shapes result, and as n increases, the number of unique shapes increases exponentially. For n equal 4, there are 8 unique shapes. But for n equal 8, there are 6,922 unique shapes. 2,948 are chiral. This illustrates the need for a supercomputer. The work here was done on a convex C220 at the North Carolina Supercomputing Center.
The numerical simulation of oil-water fluid flows has proven to be a challenging problem due in part to the difficulty of capturing interfacial dynamics, but also because the geometries in which these fluids coexist is often complex. Derived from first principles, the lattice-Boltzmann method has become a very popular means of modeling fluid dynamics due to its ability to represent the exact Navier-Stokes equations in a parallel fashion. The lattice-Boltzmann theory developed for this simulation is based on a body-centered cubic lattice in 3 dimensions. Note that the cells of this lattice allow for particles of 2 non-zero speeds, depending on which link they reside on. Particles that travel on the 6 links that connect to the faces of the cube move with speed 1, while particles traveling on the remaining 8 links move with speed square root 3. The particles residing at the center of the cube have a 0 velocity associated with them. A local density and velocity can be defined for the lattice-Boltzmann method through an ensemble average distribution function of particles for each of the 15 velocity directions. The cell density is calculated as a simple population count of the ensemble average distribution function. The momentum density is defined as the sum over all the directions of the cell of the particle distribution function multiplied by its associated velocity vector. This geometry was provided by Mobil Oil Company, created by a CAT scan of a core sample of Berea sandstone at a resolution of 10 microns. The overall physical size of the geometry is 1.28 millimeters on a side, resulting in a computational system size of 128 cubed. The simulation shown here tests oil recovery by water pumping. The fluid depicted as red represents the water phase, and the blue fluid models the oil phase. Similar to real enhanced oil recovery, the water phase is being used to drive the oil phase out of the porous medium, which is shown as clear. As seen in this time series evolution, the water does not systematically force the oil out. Rather, the water phase forms long fingers through the porous rock, leaving a large portion of oil behind. This effect is a consequence of the affinity that the porous medium has for the oil phase, otherwise known as wettability. A great deal of effort has gone into the study of the effects of wettability on relative permeability versus saturation curves. It is now known that natural oil reservoirs have rock structure which is oil wet in some regions and water wet in others. There is also strong evidence that previously water wet regions may become oil wet as high pressure water injection forces the oil past the thin layer of water which surrounds water-wet rock. This space and time dependent wettability can also be easily and efficiently implemented computationally with a lattice Boltzmann technique.
A mobilizing agent, water in this case shown as blue, is pumped into the ground by an injection well, and contaminants or oil, shown as brown, are removed by production wells. Subsurface permeability is shown by cloudiness. Areas of low permeability are shown more opaque. Input devices permit the user to easily specify three-dimensional simulation parameters, such as the location of the wells. Virtual reality output devices enhance the display, increasing user understanding of the simulation.
Alaska, the last frontier, is situated on the northern boundary of the Pacific Rim. Home to the highest mountains in North America, the mountain ranges of Alaska contain over 50 active volcanoes, shown here as red triangles. Alaska is a polar crossroads where aircraft traverse the Great Circle Airways between Asia, Europe, and North America. Volcanic eruptions in Alaska and the resulting airborne ash clouds pose a significant hazard to more than 40,000 transpolar flights each year. The geographical region for this visualization study is South Central Alaska. Features shown in the study area are Mount Redoubt, Mount McKinley, the Alaska Range, Cook Inlet, and the cities of Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Valdez. This visualization study portrays two eruptions of the Mount Redoubt volcano on December 15, 1989, and the subsequent encounter with the airborne ash plume by a Boeing 747 passenger jetliner. As the plan view transforms into a three-dimensional landscape, we pass over Valdez and travel northwest over the rugged Chugach Mountains toward Anchorage. In the past 200 years, most of Alaska's active volcanoes have erupted at least once. The resulting ash plumes are invisible to radar and are often concealed by weather clouds. This animation was created using a system for predicting the movement of ash plumes developed by the Alaska Volcano Observatory and the Arctic Region Supercomputing Center. Using meteorological and geophysical data from volcanic eruptions, computer models provide predictions of ash cloud movement for up to 72 hours. Passing over Anchorage, we bank to the left, beginning a turn to the southwest. The two prominent peaks passing from left to right are Mount McKinley at 20,320 feet, the highest mountain in North America, and nearby Mount Foraker. Continuing our turn to the left, we level out facing Redoubt Volcano in the center of the screen. Ash plumes from this 10,197-foot high mountain and neighboring Mount Spur have disrupted air traffic in the Anchorage area on several occasions in the last 5 years. The first eruption on the morning of December 15, 1989 begins at 3:48 a.m. and continues for 10 minutes. Our flight path approaches and then circles the ash cloud rising from Mount Redoubt. As we pass west and then south of the eruption, we observe the ash plume rising to over 40,000 feet, where it begins to move northeasterly on the prevailing winds. Over the next few hours, our flight path circles south of Mount Redoubt as the ash plume clears away from the volcano in the direction of Anchorage. The animation combines the motion of the viewer with the time evolution of the ash cloud above a digital terrain model. The colors of the terrain are set according to elevation above sea level and were chosen to approximate ground cover during the fall season in Alaska. The vertical scale of the terrain is exaggerated to better emphasize the topography. The ash plume is rendered as an isosurface with a brown color approximating volcanic ash. Details of the cloud shape are highlighted through lighting effects, and when viewed at a computer workstation, the resulting geometry can be manipulated interactively to view the ash plume from any desired direction. The ash plume isosurface is based on the output of a model developed by Hiroshi Tanaka of the Geophysical Institute of the University of Alaska and Tsukuba University, Japan. Using meteorological data and eruption parameters for input, the model predicts the density of volcanic ash particles in the atmosphere as a function of time. The three-dimensional Lagrangian form of the diffusion equation is employed to model particle diffusion, taking into account the size distribution of the ash particles and gravitational settling described by Stokes' law. We are looking north in the direction of Anchorage, and we can see the wide dispersion of the ash plume, which has passed over the Anchorage area and continued to the northeast. As we continue north past the volcano, a second, much larger eruption occurs at 10:15 a.m. and lasts for 40 minutes. At the time of the second eruption, Flight 867, a Boeing 747 jet with 227 passengers aboard, was southbound at 33,000 feet, approximately 600 miles north of Anchorage. Unaware of the eruption, which was hidden by clouds and invisible to radar, the jet proceeded on a collision course with the ash cloud. At 11:46 a.m., the jetliner enters the ash plume about 100 miles north of Anchorage and loses power in all engines, as shown by the red color of the flight path as it emerges from the cloud. With the cockpit windows blackened by the ash, the powerless jet glides for 8 minutes, while the flight crew reverses course and attempts to restart the engines. Barely 7,000 feet above the ground, the engines are restarted, and the jet is able to make a safe emergency landing in Anchorage at 12:25 p.m. The flight path of the jetliner is based on data obtained from the Federal Aviation Administration. The flight path is modeled using three-dimensional time-dependent cubic splines. A similar technique is used to control the camera motion required for the flyby in this animation. Since 1989, 2 additional major eruptions of neighboring Mount Spur have disrupted the international air traffic of the Anchorage area. Recognizing the hazard to aviation safety in Alaska, the Alaska Volcano Observatory continues to improve techniques to forecast the movement of volcanic ash in the atmosphere. As the animation draws to a close, we see the wide dispersion of the ash plume 12 hours after the first eruption. In the final view, the three-dimensional terrain is returned to a map view resembling what a satellite would see from outer space. The eruption visualization of Mount Redoubt volcano was produced in a collaborative effort by the University of Alaska Geophysical Institute and the Arctic Region Supercomputing Center. In this animation segment, we simulate the view from the cockpit of Flight 867, a Boeing 747 jetliner, during the December 15th encounter with the Mount Redoubt ash plume. The flight begins at 11:20 a.m., about 250 miles north of Anchorage, just after Mount Redoubt has erupted. The jetliner is flying south at 33,000 feet at a speed of more than 500 miles per hour. The ash plume from Mount Redoubt, rising prominently in the center of the screen, was hidden by weather clouds and low light conditions during the actual encounter. As the jet enters the ash cloud at 11:46 a.m., the first sign of danger is a sudden blackening of all forward-facing cockpit windows. Blasted by rock and glass particles traveling at 500 miles per hour, the windows became opaque almost instantly. The crew, forced to navigate solely by instruments, banks the jet sharply to the left to reverse course in an attempt to avoid the ash. Seconds later, all 4 engines quit, and the jetliner begins gliding towards the rugged Talkeetna Mountains below. Fighting to maintain control of the blinded and powerless jet, the crew is keenly aware of the 10,000-foot mountains below them. As the flight engineer repeatedly executes the engine restart sequence, the pilot banks right, then left again, searching for a way out of the ash and away from the mountains below. After 8 minutes of near panic, the crew succeeds in restarting the engines barely 7,000 feet above the ground. The animation comes to a close as the jet slows and makes its final approach for a safe emergency landing at Anchorage International Airport at 12:25 p.m. The flight path for this simulation is based on data obtained from the Federal Aviation Administration and is modeled using 3-dimensional time-dependent cubic splines. The visualization of the Mount Redoubt volcano eruption was produced through a collaborative effort by the University of Alaska Geophysical Institute and the Arctic Region Supercomputing Center.
This jacketing die is used to coat a polymer fiber with a protective jacket, also made of polymer. The geometry presented with AVS is the cavity in which the molted jacketing polymer flows, in through the rectangular inlet and out through the edges of the center hole. The fiber to be coated is fed continuously through this center hole. One of the purposes of the FIDAP simulations was to identify and eliminate low flow areas in the cavity. If the coating polymer stays too long in the jacketing die, it starts to degrade. Using a custom AVS module, the polymer residency time was calculated by integrating the velocity, starting from each node of the UCD structure and finishing when reaching the inlet. This yields a UCD structure with time as scalar nodal data, which is displayed and animated as isosurfaces. time series animations and z-axis rotations are shown of the velocity scalar potential from a nonlinear fluid simulation of an alpha helium-4 driven toroidal alpha instability in a toroidal magnetically confined fusion plasma. Evolving ray-traced images along with a 2D colorized contour slice are shown. In this sequence, an extruded 2D color contour slice is shown with and without toroidally axisymmetric components. These visualizations have been useful in diagnosing self-organization and the role of turbulence-generated shear flow velocities in reaching a nonlinear saturated state.
Welcome to the 1993 Convex AVS Animation Library. Our first visualization is a human cell image from a confocal microscope. This visualization has been created using a parallelized version of the tracer module and using vectorized sampling modules. Most of these frames were rendered on a C3840 using the Convex developed high-quality micropolygon renderer. What you're seeing are different slices through three-dimensional image created from the confocal microscope. We're now excavating the surface using a Convex custom developed excavate module. This is a protein ribbon model of the HIV reverse transcriptase molecule. This is the molecule that the HIV virus uses to copy its viral DNA into the target cell. The ribbon is colored according to the structural motif of the region being represented. The code to calculate the structural motif was donated from a customer in Switzerland and was vectorized, and these frames were calculated on a Convex C240. This is the rhinovirus, also known as the common cold virus, and we're going to show a space-filled molecular model. Again, we're showing only the backbone. One of the features of the protein modeling tools is the ability to select out impertinent information to be able to better understand the underlying structure. The atoms are colored according to the amino acid residue type that they belong to. Again, by rotating the structure around, we're better able to understand its structure and function. We're now zooming in on the active site of the rhinovirus. This is an image of a human head created using magnetic resonance imaging. This is again visualized using the tracer module, which allows voxel visualization. These slices and excavation are created using vectorized versions of those modules. This is a model of a cyclone system. This is using the Convex AVS 4D particle add vector, as well as the isosurface module. And it's mapped using a Convex developed polar coordinate mapping module. This gives climate scientists an opportunity to view in 3 dimensions and to interact in 3 dimensions with the data that they're studying. These simulations, as well as the visualizations, were created on Convex supercomputers. This is a topographic globe model of bathymetric data rendered using the polar coordinate mapping module, a vectorized field to mesh module, and a custom color map developed with the Convex AVS color editor. This visualization took over a month of real time to calculate and render. Relief is given to the map by using the parameters on the field to mesh module, which allow the z-axis to be exaggerated. The color map was created using a nonlinear feature of the Convex AVS color editor, which allowed various regions to be mapped to specific colors, thus allowing the depths of the sea to be blue and the borders at 0 to be given land colors, green and brown. Since this is bathymetric data, it also allows us to see physical features underneath the seafloor, which we're passing over right now. By using the vectorized version of the field to mesh module, we're able to increase the throughput over 100x. Passing over the Mid-Atlantic Rift. This is a computational simulation of a thunderstorm system. This uses the 4D particle add vector, as well as the vectorized isosurface module. The high-quality renderer allows us to make the isosurface, the cloud, translucent. Thanks for joining us, the Convex AVS 1993 Animation Library.
We have developed an approximation of protein surfaces and properties based upon expansions of spherical harmonic functions. This enables the analytical computation of shape properties and facilitates representation of the surface and its properties at multiple length scales. Here, color reflects shape characteristics. In predicting the interactions of two proteins, it can be advantageous to evaluate the large-scale features and complementarity before focusing on the details. Triangulation of the surface is based upon the icosahedron. The level of subdivision is under user control. This facilitates the trade-off between computational or rendering detail and real-time interactivity. Mobility is an important aspect of protein structure and interaction. Here we computed the normal mode vibrations of a protein structure and used the spherical harmonic approximation to represent this motion at a variety of length scales. The color coding now represents displacement from the equilibrium structure. Such representations can help indicate which parts of a protein surface may deform or be displaced during an interaction with another molecule. Spherical harmonic representations enable the real-time analysis of protein-protein docking. Here we show interactive manipulation of two protein surfaces with on-the-fly computation and display of an interfacial surface, showing the complementarity between the two proteins. AVS has served as a powerful environment in which to prototype and to visualize this type of work.